Hey everybody, and thank you for joining us for 5 Minutes in the Word. Yesterday we talked about the divisions of the Bible. We talked about the Old, the New Testament, and we briefly talked about the divisions, especially of the Old Testament. How that each section of those 39 books of the Old Testament, that how they're broken down, and how that through those divisions we see a beautiful story. We see the story of God. We see the story of how He brought things about. But I want us to dive a little bit deeper and to look at something. When we come to the book of Genesis and we look there at this beginning, the beginning of the Pentateuch, the beginning of these books of law, you see here in the book of Genesis the creation account. Yeah. And as we come into the creation account, what are some things that you think would be really important for us to note today?
Okay, one thing that I want to observe, and you'll see it as you go through this first chapter of Genesis, is that Hebrew people do not talk about day and night.
Right.
They talk about night and day. So the evening and the morning were the first day.
Right.
So they still have 24 hours in their day. Nothing changes about that, but they start the day at 6 o'clock at night, which is, if you don't understand that, you begin to look at the Old Testament and think, this is all upside down. Well, it is for the way we deal with things, but not for the way they dealt with it. Another thing that I think is important to see in the creation is that everything reproduced after its kind.
Absolutely.
That a seed will only produce whatever it is. Right. If it's a tomato seed, it's going to be tomatoes. If it's a corn seed or a kernel of corn, it'll be corn.
Right.
And on we could go. I think that's important. And then, wow, the number of times that the name God is there.
Oh, absolutely.
Something like 30 times.
Right.
In the first chapter, God. There's an emphasis there, and it's all about God. And then one other thing, it's good.
It is good. Well, when I listen and I look into the creation account, I think about that. Here is God. He's there in the beginning. So we know who started everything. We know who created everything. So we see that Creator God, and we see His creation and mankind. He says that man was made in His image. Male and female. That's really important for us to recognize. And so here He is, and His good creation, man and woman, and we need to recognize that. We need to recognize that about ourselves. Right. We need to recognize that about all of mankind, that God made us, and He said that mankind was good. But
I want to say something. You made me think of this. Anybody looking at this video knows right. You don't look like me.
No.
I don't look like you.
That's right.
And if our wives were here, they would say, you really don't look like them.
That's right.
So when we're saying in the image of God, it's important to realize that God is a spirit.
It is.
So He doesn't have a body like we know it.
Right.
Now, what does His body look like? Well, John says we don't know.
All right.
So we'll find out when Jesus comes back. We'll all find out. Well, okay, that's great. But we're made in God's image in the sense that man is uniquely made with a spirit.
That's right. And it is with that spirit that we are different than the rest of His creation, that we're different from the plants and the animals and everything else, and we're special. Yeah. Now, what's interesting to note is that here's mankind. There's Adam and Eve, and they are made, and they're put into this garden. It's perfect. It's just beautiful, and all kinds of fruit, all kinds of things that they are to partake of. But there was one tree. There was one tree in the midst of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they were not to partake of it. Here was their obstacle. Here was their something before them that they were not to take of, and yet here comes the serpent. Yeah. And here comes the serpent, and he tempts Eve, and she sees that this fruit is good for food. This fruit can make her wise. Now, we don't know what kind of fruit it was. I don't know what it looked like. I don't know what it tasted like. There's no way to know that. Yeah. But here's this fruit. She says that she sees that it can make her wise. She sees that it can make, this good for food. And
Looks good.
it looks good. And so she partakes of it. And she takes of this fruit and she eats and she gives to her husband, Adam, who is with her. She gives it to him and he takes and he eats. Here, they have violated God's law. Here is in this perfect scenario that there is no sin. There's no sin that's there before this time. And yet, here Adam and Eve have taken of this fruit and they have eaten it and they have transgressed against God, against his laws. And, you know, we see this, that mankind, even though made in his image, even though his special creation, chose sin.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think that we need to recognize.
I agree with you. And I hope that all of us realize God loves us. And because he loves us, he gave us freedom of choice. But if we make a bad choice, well, I'll tell you what, we need to talk about that in some coming lessons.
That's right.
So for today, we really enjoyed being with you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.